Hello, everyone.
To the diner.
Just want to welcome everyone to our 76th anniversary of the Four Chaplains Master Ceremony. And this is something that we've been doing for about 8 years now. And I'm very happy that I have the opportunity to do this service for the meeting. So at this point, we'll start. And please stand. With our colors in place, we'll have the national anthem by Alyssa Martin.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ready?
At this point, we'll have a dedication to the POW MIA done by Pat Lunner.
It's an Irish name. Before we begin our festivities this afternoon, we will recognize our POWs and MIAs. We call your attention to this small table, which occupies a place of honor near the head table. It has been set for one, symbolizing the fact that our members of our armed forces are missing from our ranks. They are referred to as POWs and MIAs, our comrades in arms. They are unable to be with their loved ones and families tonight, so we join with them in this humble tribute. This table is set for one. It is small, symbolizing the frailty of one prisoner alone against an army of his oppressors. The tablecloth is white, symbolic of the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. The single red rose in the vase reminds us of the family and friends of our missing brothers and who keep the faith while awaiting their return. The red ribbon on the vase represents the red ribbons worn on the lapels of the thousands who demand an unyielding determination of proper accounting of our brothers who are not among us today. The slice of lemon on the plate reminds us of their bitter fate. The salt sprinkled on the plate reminds us of the countless fallen tears of the families as they wait. The glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us here today. The chair is empty. They are not here. The candle is reminiscent of the light of hope which lives in our hearts to illuminate their way home, away from their captors to the open arms of a grateful nation. Let us pray to the Supreme Commandant that all of our comrades will soon be back within our ranks. Let us remember.
Thank you. At this point, everyone can sit. We'd like to welcome our clergy. We have Rabbi Robert Weiner of Temple Bethel. We have Reverend Dan O'Brien, Calvary Bible Church. We have Pastor Christopher Chantelo, Grace Lutheran Church. We have Monsignor Joseph Giandorco of St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Church. We also have quite a few guests here. We have the Korean War Veterans Association. We have the Vietnam Veterans, Chapter 49. We have Mount Kisco American Legion Commander. We have New York State Senator Peter Hoffman. We have Town Supervisor Matt Slater. We have past Town Supervisor Lonnie Gilbert. We have Town Council Member Tom Diana. We have Vishnu Patel. We have Town Clerk Diana Quast. We have the Honorable Judges Sal Adonia and Gary Ranieri. And we have the Highway Superintendent Dave Pagadelli. Thank you for all attending. Okay, at this point, could everyone just check your phones, make sure all your phones are off? I would hate to have a modern interruption on an old event. Thank you. Okay, this is a very popular question. What is a chaplain? Perhaps you asked many times yourself, what is the difference between a chaplain and a minister, a priest, or a rabbi? Well, chaplains are ministers, priests, and rabbis, but their responsibility for more than one church or parish or synagogue. A chaplain has a wider duties, for he's enlisted in the armed forces of the United States. He is assigned to a military unit and goes into action with them. He is unarmed, and his job is to take care of the religious needs of all the military personnel with whom he comes in contact with, and to bolster up their morale in the hour of need. A chaplain is on tap day and night in all kinds of weather. He moves from one danger spot to another, but he has no way of protecting himself from an attack by the enemy. A chaplain must always be willing to go even further than an armed man. He must always be ready to go beyond the call of duty. On February 3rd, 1943, the USAT Dorchester was tragically sunk. Of the 902 young men on board, only 230 survived its sinking. Many of those survivors owe their lives to the courage and leadership exhibited by the heroic four chaplains, who in sacrificing their lives created a unique legacy of brotherhood. Since 1951, the Chapel of the Four Chaplains has spread the message of interfaith cooperation and selfless service touching the lives of thousands of people across this great country. There will be thousands of Fort Chaplain Interfaith Memorial Services held across the nation on or near February 3rd. This service is a tribute to those courageous chaplains and the 672 brave men who lost their lives on that fateful night. Further, this service honors all those who have served and whose courage and faith have sustained our country. It is important that we teach our children and youth about this great event and great sacrifices, for they are our future. It is vital for them to understand what selfless service on behalf of others can accomplish. The U.S. Army transport Dorchester was crammed with nearly 1,000 American soldiers, seamen, and civilians as it pulled out of port from St. John's, Newfoundland on January 29, 1943. Just a few months earlier, she had been a luxury liner that had cruised the East Coast for 16 years. A full load for her in those heady days was 341 passengers and crew. Then came the reality of World at War, the rebirth as a troop ship. Her days of whisking away the wealthy for fun and diversion were gone for good. The Dorchester, one of 3 ships in the convoy, was moving steadily across the icy waters from Newfoundland towards an American base in Greenland. The convoy was escorted by Coast Guard cutters Tampa, Escambera, and Comanche. Hans J. Danielson, the ship's captain, was concerned and cautious. Earlier, the cutter Tampa had detected a submarine. Danielson knew he was in dangerous waters even before he got the alarming information. German U-boats were constantly prowling these vital sea lanes, and several ships had already been blasted and sunk. On the evening of February 2nd, 1943, the Dorchester was now only 150 miles from its destination. But the captain ordered the men to sleep with their clothing and keep their life jackets on. Many soldiers sleeping deep in the ship's hold disregarded the order because of the engine's heat. Others ignored it because life jackets were just uncomfortable. On February 3rd, at 12:55 a.m., a periscope broke the chilly Atlantic waters. An officer aboard the German submarine U-223 spotted the Dorchester. The U-boat approached the convoy on the surface, and after identifying and targeting the ship, fired 3 torpedoes. One torpedo struck the starboard side, amidship, far below the waterline. The explosion cut off all power, including the steam needed for the abandoned ship alarms. Captain Danielson, alerted that the Dorchester was taking water rapidly, gave the order to abandon ship. In less than 20 minutes, the Dorchester would slip beneath the Atlantic's icy waters. Aboard the Dorchester, panic and chaos had set in. The blast had killed scores of men, and many more were seriously wounded. Others, stunned by the explosion, were groping in the dark. Those who could rush topside, where they were confronted first by a blast of icy Arctic air, and then by the knowledge that death awaited. Men jumped from the ship into the lifeboats, and overcrowding them to the point of capsizing. Other rafts tossed into the Atlantic Ocean drifted away before soldiers could get to them. Tragically, the torpedo hit had also knocked out radio contact with the 3 escort ships. The cutter Comanche, however, saw the flash of the explosion, and along with the Canberra, rushed to the rescue the survivors in the water. Because most of the survivors had been weakened by extreme cold and faced drowning, the crew of the Canberra tried a new rescue technique involving swimmers with wetsuits who swam to the victims and tied lines to them so that they could be hauled aboard the cutters. Through the pandemonium, the four chaplains brought hope in despair and light in darkness. These chaplains were close friends. There was John Washington, a Catholic priest from New Jersey, Clark Poland of Michigan, a Dutch Reformed pastor, whose father had been a chaplain in World War I. Alexander Good, a Pennsylvania rabbi and the son of a rabbi, and George Fox, a Methodist minister from Vermont, who served as his state's American Legion chaplain. The chaplains started organizing men. They handed out life jackets from the storage lockers, helped people put them on, and then led them to a place where they could jump off the ship and not be hurt. When they ran out of life jackets, the chaplains, without hesitation, just simply took off their own and placed it on the next man in line. This is a quote now. "It was the finest thing I have seen or hope to see this side of heaven," said John Ladd, another survivor who saw the chaplain's selfless act. One witness, Private William B. Benadar, found himself floating in oil-smeared water, surrounded by dead bodies and debris. "I could hear men crying, pleading, praying." He recalls, "I could also hear the chaplains preaching courage. Their voices were the only thing that kept me going." Ladd's response is understandable. The altruistic actions of the four chaplains continues one of the purest spiritual and ethical acts a person can make. As the ship went down, survivors in nearby rafts could see the four chaplains, arms linked and braced together on the slanting deck. Their voices could also be heard offering prayers. Of the 902 men aboard the Dorchester, 672 died, leaving 230 survivors. When the news reached American shores, the nation was stunned by the magnitude of the tragedy and heroic conduct of the four chaplains. "Valor is a gift," Carl Sandburg once said. "Those having it never know for sure whether they have it until the test comes." That night, Reverend Fox, Rabbi Good, Reverend Poland, and Father Washington passed life's ultimate test. In doing so, they became an enduring example of extraordinary faith, courage, and selflessness. The Distinguished Service Cross and the Purple Heart was awarded posthumously on December 19, 1944, to the next of kin by Lieutenant General Somerville, Commandant General of the Army Services. A one-time posthumous Special Medal of Heroism was authorized by Congress and awarded by President Eisenhower on January 18, 1961. Congress had attempted to confer the Medal of Honor, but was blocked by stringent requirements that require heroism performed under fire. The Special Medal was intended to have the same weight and importance as the Medal of Honor. Now we have monuments that's been there for years, and I don't know if people actually knew that there was a monument for the four chaplains at Belmont Racetrack. There was another one at Grant's Tomb. That was in 1950 when that was placed. At this time, we will have a lighting of the candles for each of the chaplains. A candle will now be lit for Chaplain George Fox, Methodist minister, by Pastor Christopher Chantelo of the Grace Lutheran Church.
I light this candle in memory of George Fox, Methodist Army chaplain. George Fox was the Methodist Army chaplain on board the Dorchester that evening. He was from Vermont. When he was growing up, he wanted to be an accountant. But in 1917, when World War I broke out, he, like many other zealot patriots, wanted to go and fight, though he was too young. So George inflated his age just a bit to be able to go. Even though he was just in his teens, he was awarded the Silver Star for rescuing a comrade on the battlefield, which was filled with poisonous gas. George went out, even though he had no gas mask himself, and rescued the soldier. Once the war was over and he was discharged from the Army, George continued his studies to be an accountant and built a fine practice. But God had different plans for him. God called him to the ministry, and George embarked on an illustrious career of academic study that led him to be called as a Methodist pastor back in his home state of Vermont. When the Second World War broke out, George once again felt compelled to enlist, telling his wife, "I've got to go. I know from experience what our boys are about to face. They need me." George Fox began active duty again after going to Army chaplain school at Harvard University, where he met the other 3 chaplains, going into active duty on August 8, 1942, and serving until that fateful morning of February 3, 1943.
This time we'll have a candle lit for Chaplain and Alexander Good, Rabbi, by Rabbi Robert Weiner of the Temple Beth Ann.
I light this candle in memory of Chaplain Alexander Good. Alexander Good was from Washington, D.C. He was far too young to play a part in World War I. While George Fox was winning his Silver Star, Alex was receiving medals from Eastern High School. He was a first-rate tennis player. He was on the swimming and track teams, and at the same time, he was a straight-A scholar. His father, who was a rabbi, expected that his son would become a trial lawyer. He and his wife were astonished, but pleased, when Alex decided to follow in his father's footsteps. Alex was always a hail fellow well met. And like Johnny Washington, he was extremely popular. He was full of surprises. His decision to be a rabbi wasn't the only one. After he got his synagogue, he told his wife, who had been his childhood sweetheart, "I want to continue my education." So, for 3 long years, he drove 45 miles a day to Johns Hopkins University to study. He wasn't satisfied until he'd won his degree, a PhD, in Oriental languages. Alex had one child, a daughter, who adored him, but neither his wife nor his child could keep him from becoming a chaplain. They didn't even try. And their pride in him was greater than it had ever been.
We will now have a candle lit now by Pastor Dan O'Brien for Captain Mark Poland, Dutch Reformed minister.
light this candle in memory of Chaplain Clark. Pastor Clark Poling was from Schenectady. He was from the Old Dutch Reformed Church. He went to prep school studying to become a lawyer, when quite suddenly he decided to be a minister. His father, Dr. Daniel A. Poling, was thrilled and delighted. Before making his great decision, Clark spent 2 years at Hope College in Holland, Michigan, and his last 2 years at Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey. He went on to take his BD degree at Yale Divinity School. When the Second World War came along, Clark, the youngest of the 4 men of God, said he didn't want to be a chaplain. "I can carry a gun as well as the next guy," he said to his father. "I don't intend to hide behind my church in some safe spot." Dr. Poling, his father, made an issue of it. "I think you're scared," he accused, "or else you're whistling in the dark. Haven't you heard that the mortality rate of the chaplains is second only to the Air Force? You can't kill anybody, but you can get yourself killed." Clark also was married to a charming girl who helped him in his church work and his Sunday school, and took an eager part in his many activities. He had one small son who was nicknamed Corky. Every time Clark looked at him, he remembered his own happy child.
We will have a candle lit now for Chaplain John Washington, Catholic priest, by Monsignor Giandorco.
I light this candle in memory of Chaplain John P. Washington. John P. Washington grew up poor, scrappy, and determined in the toughest section in Newark, New Jersey. One of 9 children born to an Irish immigrant family, he was blessed with a sunny disposition, a beautiful singing voice, and a love for music. He also loved a good fight and was leader of the South 12th Street Gang when he was called to the priesthood. He played ball with the boys of the parish, organized sports teams, and when war came along, went with his boys into the Army. He began active duty on May 9th, 1942. His wonderful voice, raised in song and prayer to comfort those around him, could be heard until his final moments on February 3rd, 1943.
Please stand at this time for the rendering of honors and salute.
chaplains, their devotion to God and country. And then a small hymn. When the storms of life are raging, Lord, stand by me. When the current pulls me under, Lord, stand by me. When the rising waters toss me like a ship upon the sea, you who rule the wind and water, Lord, stand by me. Stand by me, stand by me, lift me up from the restless sea. When I am lost, when love can't be found, when no one cares, Lord, stand by me. In the midst of persecution, Lord, stand by me. When my enemies surround me, Lord, stand by me. When the tyrant wields his terror and the armies wage their might, when the darkness overwhelms me, Lord, stand by me. Stand by me, stand by me, lift me up from the restless sea. When I am lost, when love can't be found, when no one cares, Lord, stand by me. Stand by me.
Please take your seats. This concludes our the Chapel of the Four Chapel service.